put on a different shirt if you'd like.
It looks good.
How are things?
Things are good, man. Well, good afternoon and welcome to our town hall, our virtual town hall. I'm Bruce McAllister and I'll be moderating, hosting us through the next hour. We're so pleased that you joined us. Today is a huge day. In just a minute, I'm going to introduce that gentleman that you see on your screen with us. You probably recognize him, but today is the last day to buy a membership to vote for Alberta's next premier. Midnight tonight is the cutoff. So what we're going to do today, obviously, is encourage you to go to daniellesmith.ca. If you don't have a membership yet, go to daniellesmith.ca, follow the proper links, really easy to do, and make sure you have a membership so that we can vote for Danielle and for the next premier. Just having a few technical hiccups here, which is the way of the world, I think, with technology the way that it is. Danielle is going to join us momentarily, and we're going to hear from her. We're going to talk about all of the issues over the next hour. We're going to take your questions, ask you, put them on the screen, and we'll read some of those out as well. First, I'd like to introduce you to Devin Dreeshen, the MLA for Innisfail, Sylvan Lake, and former Minister of Agriculture, and from what I hear, an all-around good guy. Mr. Dreeshen, thank you for joining us.
That's great to be here, Bruce.
So I'm going to ask you a tough question right off the hop. You sat in cabinet with Jason Kenney's team. You sat in their caucus for the last few years. Yet you've put your support behind Danielle Smith for premier. Why?
Well, I think it's a really easy answer, Bruce. When you look at Danielle's campaign, what she's been saying, what she's promoting for Albertans, it really resonates. When I talk to folks in my riding and people that I know I've talked to across the province, they love the fact that she's standing up for Alberta values. And it's something that a gentleman told me once, that nobody else in Canada is going to stand up for Alberta. That we have trillions of dollars worth of oil and gas here in the province, and only Alberta can stand up for itself and to try to get those resources to market. And obviously, Albertans, we own those resources, and to be able to utilize that and to benefit everything from the social services that we use, from hospitals to schools, that we need to be able to develop and to get these, we need to develop these resources, and we need to get them to markets. And it's something that Danielle, with the Sovereignty Act, right off the bat, had every leadership campaign talking about her ideas, was something that it was warming to me to see that that's the direction that this leadership campaign was going, of who will be and who can be the best leader to be a champion for the province of Alberta. And I think that was the biggest thing that attracted me to Danielle.
Love it. Were you surprised, Devin, at how many, caucus members and now even cabinet members are coming over? I mean, Danielle seems to have a world of momentum, and the other candidates, frankly, their campaigns are much about targeting her as much as they are promoting their own ideas. Are you surprised at the momentum she has? I know you've attended some of these rallies and seen the turnout. It's just been remarkable.
Well, nothing builds momentum like momentum. And I think that's it's a testament again to her campaign right off the bat. That's every campaign started at the exact same level. And I give, a hat off to her campaign manager, Matt, and the entire team to make sure that they were the ones coming out of the gate, really leading the discussion in this campaign. But I think too, at the end of the day, I know Danielle, she is a very good person, but I think caucus, UCP MLAs in general, and I think the membership, they're not just looking for a person that they'd want to hang out with and be friends with. They're looking for someone that will lead the province and make sure that Albertans' interests are being looked after and are being promoted. And I think, again, that's why people are flocking towards Danielle, because they differentiate her from other campaigns to say that she would be the best leader and the best premier of this province.
Excellent. And obviously respecting the grassroots is key. And I know it is for you, and you have a political background with your family. And I think it's paramount to what we do, obviously, as political leaders. And I think you hit the nail right on the head there, Devin. Thank you. I'm just going to ask the team whether we have Devinder Tour with us or not. And there is the smiling face we've been waiting to see. Danielle, we've had some blips in technology. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine. I'll just sit back and wait until you are ready to call on me, but I'm ready to answer any questions you may have, Bruce.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to call on you first to set things up, and then I'm going to go to Devinder Tour when he joins us. But I just want to ask you a question in general. Look, I've been watching you. We all have crisscrossed this province from corner to corner. It's been packed rally after packed rally. How are you feeling at this point? How are you holding up, and how do you feel about the overall campaign?
Oh my goodness, it has been busy. I'm just delighted that Devin Dreesen put his support behind me yesterday. You probably also saw that Casey Madu did as well. I'm delighted to have their support. Being able to have folks from caucus and cabinet on the team is important to me, because I think when we get into the next phase of this, we have to stitch this party together. We understand that there are some traditional MLAs who came from a bit of a different perspective, and we also have some new MLAs as well. And there's been a little bit of conflict in there, and I'm hoping that we can help bridge the divide. And I'm hoping that both Devin and Casey will be able to assist with that, because we're all one big team. And I feel like we've seen an awful lot of division in our province and in between rural and urban, and between some of the decisions that have happened over the last little while. So I think that we got to focus as well on trying to find out what some of those issues are, so that we can heal that divide. And that's what I'm looking forward to doing. So I've been traveling the province all over the place, as you know, and we're getting into this final stage. Is part of the reason why I wanted to make myself available now, in case there's any final questions people have, because this is the last day for membership sales. We go until I think it's 11:59 p.m. You can buy online at daniellesmith.ca is the best way to do it. And I'm gonna try to take a couple of days of breather after we get through today, but it's a hard push right to the finish line today, Bruce.
Excellent. Well, look, you've earned it, and you deserve it, and good for you for pushing so hard. Devinder Tour, Calgary Falcon Ridge MLA, is joining us now. Devinder, it's been a while. How are you, my old friend?
Very good. How about you?
I'm doing good, Devinder. Yeah, doing really well, and happy to be helping Danielle here, and so happy to see you come on side. I'm going to ask you the tough question that I asked Devin just before you came on. Why did you decide to support Danielle and make that decision?
Bruce, I've been involved in this movement from a long time, and I had a pleasure to represent Calgary Falconage from last 3 years. While sitting in the legislature, I have seen it overreach of Ottawa, and every time we always plan and strategize and also try to negotiate the stuff. But it was always the case that they take away our wealth and also spend on their misguided priorities. So it feels like a second-class citizen sitting there. What we're looking for is that Alberta needs to have a right place in the jurisdiction and in the confederation. When I moved here as a strong, I love Canada, I love strong Alberta, and I think strong Alberta is within strong Canada, that's how building the strong confederation. So when I look at the policies, everybody is looking for a change. Though there are two objectives for this leadership: is change and unity. So when I look at all the candidates, all of our good friends, directly or indirectly related to each other. But when I look at Danielle Smith, and I had a pleasure to serve under her leadership in Wild Rose from outside. But when I saw that Danielle has a clear vision, who can stand up to Trudeau, who can beat Rachel Notley in the next election, and also if Alberta want to reach its potential, I was looking for somebody who can help Albertans and the caucus to bring the unity. So that's why I had a pleasure to endorse and support Danielle Smith.
Love it. And no MLA does without the backing and support of their constituents. And obviously you have to factor that into every decision that you make. It's why we're elected to represent the people that vote for us. What are you hearing from your constituents on this leadership race?
Is it for me?
Yep, you betcha. What are your constituents? What are your constituents telling you, Devinder, about
honestly, we've been through the crisis from last 2 years. It was the health crisis, it was the economic crisis, and the decision we made it in last 2 years. It was hard to find a balance, and I think my constituents are looking for the main objective is jobs and economy. And I represent one of the most multicultural and ethnic community in Alberta. And also immigration is an issue. Bruce, I just want to remind that we don't have much control over immigration. We receive about 450,000 new immigrants every year. But when you look at Quebec, they control 20% of immigration, so which is about 90,000 new immigrants, which they never fulfill this quota ever. And Alberta is in a need of workers, skilled workers in every profession, right from the retail stores, you can say trucking industry, construction industry, farming. We are looking for a lot of people who can, we're short of staffs, we're short of workers, skilled labor. So we're looking for somebody who can lobby the federal government and basically find our place and get a full control of immigration along with agriculture and other industries. So that's why I'm happy that my constituents and my supporters are helping Danielle Smith to achieve that target.
Excellent. Listen, before I let the two of you go, Devin, any final thoughts on where we're at with the deadline approaching? Again, midnight tonight to buy a membership. Just any final thoughts that you want to get out there?
Well, I encouraged everyone last night at the rally to tell their family, friends, neighbors, even random people you meet on the street, just to say it's so important to make sure that we have a premier that's going to stand up for Alberta, and also to be a conservative, not just in name only, to actually stand up for conservative values. And really, when you look at it, and you're going to have CBC or the left-wing mainstream media attacking a conservative, that's a good thing. If you have $1 billion+ entity out there that is being supported by the Liberals, Justin Trudeau in 2015 campaigned to give CBC $300 million more dollars. If they're not upset with you, then why would you want to be a conservative leader? And I think Danielle is fantastic that she can stand up to the left-wing media and know how the balance of right versus left politics is in the country. And I'm just so excited to be part of that team.
All right, Devin Dreeshen in Innisfail, Sylvan Lake, and Devinder Tour in Calgary, Falconridge. Gentlemen, thank you for your support of Danielle, your candid comments, and your leadership for your constituents in the province. Wish you well, and we'll talk to you both soon.
Thanks much, Bruce.
Thank you.
See you, Devinder. Danielle, it's going to be you and I here for a little while, and I'm just going to remind everybody before we get started on some questions, if you do not have a membership and you would like to vote for the next premier of this province, you go to daniellesmith.ca and you buy a membership. It'll cost you $10, and you'll have a say in who Alberta's next leader is. And I sure hope that we're looking at her on the screen, making herself available to you today. Danielle, I'm going to read some questions, and I'm going to apologize.
Before you get there, Bruce.
Yes, go ahead.
Just let me brag about these two MLAs a little bit, because
sure, yeah,
that's one of the things that I think is so amazing that I've discovered as I've been going through. I've been trying to have hour-long conversations with all of the MLAs, and sometimes more than one. And you wouldn't believe there's just such a deep talent pool in caucus. It's when I was talking with Devin Dreeshen, he was just telling me about what life was like out in his neck of the woods. Because remember, he's still a food producer, and so he's been doing his various roles as an elected representative, while still doing that hard work over the summers, especially of getting product in the ground, dealing with the threatened fertilizer reduction, making sure that he is able to produce so that we can feed the world, all the rising costs. So he feels that firsthand, and that's what's so important, is making sure that we've got people on the ground who can feed that information into decision makers. And then Devinder as well. I've known him such a long time, back in the days when I was in politics before. And I've just watched him grow as a legislator and a representative. He's also a business person. And I think that that's the other part, is that when you've got people who have had that small business experience, they are also able to bring that to bear when we're having conversations around the caucus table. So I'm just delighted that every conversation I have, I just learn something more about each of the MLAs. I think we've got a really solid crew. I know we've had frustration because we've had some unpopular decisions in the last couple of years, but I don't want people to lose sight of the fact that there is so much going right in this province. If we were just talking about the economy and just talking about business attraction and just talking about how excited people are to be moving to Alberta, I think that we wouldn't have had this change of leadership. But the reason why I entered in is because I know that we've got to make a strong promise that we're not going to have lockdowns again in the fall. And I've committed to that. We're going to find another way to protect our most vulnerable. And we also have to start addressing the issues of taking on Ottawa. And I think that that's the biggest fight that we need to have. But I don't want people to think that the entire record of the UCP has been bad for the last 3 years. It's actually been quite extraordinary when it comes to the business attraction, the business investment. We keep hearing about billion-dollar investments all the time. And I think that's part of the legacy that we want to continue on.
Excellent. From the heart, and frankly, most people would agree with your assessment of those two MLAs. Danielle, you led me right into the first question I wanted to ask you, and I'm going to apologize to you at home, and Dee, to you too. When you get my age, you've got to get really close to the screen to see the question. So if you see me squinting, I'm just trying to read some of the questions that we're getting sent into us. And we've got one from Tony. Tony wants to know, effectively, I'm going to paraphrase, but he recognizes the division that we've seen with the UCP and wants to know what we can do about unity to make sure, and I know it's been part of your pledge, that all Conservatives are welcome in the tent.
Yeah, completely. For me, I think a lot of this is just really that if you respect others, they will respect you. And one of the things I learned on talk radio for 6 years is that everybody has a voice. Not every voice we will agree with, and not every person can we agree with 100%. But you know what? With virtually everyone, you can find one thing to agree with. And so I took that approach, as even my harshest critics and opponents, I always try to start from a position of, is there one thing we can agree on? I should actually give you a story over the Stampede. I ended up being at the Equal Voice event that had Courtney Brannigan and the other Courtney from the city council. Sorry, there's two Courtneys on council, but they're both known to be quite left wing. And so I walked up to both of them and I said, I know that Dan McLean is the most conservative council member. Do you have one thing that you can agree with him on? And you know what? They both did. One of them agreed on the need to restart the Calgary Event Center, and the other agreed that we've got to do something about trying to get the transit and the LRT stations safer so that people feel more comfortable riding them. So that to me was an affirmation of what I've always believed, is that even though we see in the media what appears to be polarization, if you can start with an area of agreement, then you say, maybe there's other things I can agree with that person on. And so those are the reasons why I think every voice needs to be in the discussion, because those are the places that we find common ground.
Excellent answer. Linda wants to know what you're going to do, or what can you do to stay strong with the media, basically making you the target. And I'll preface this question by saying both of us are former members of the media. Of course, you as a great radio talk show host and host of Global Sunday on Global for years before that. And I was 20 years in that trade and 8 years the host of the morning news on Global Calgary. So we're both very familiar with the media, but it has changed. And it is left-leaning, and it does seem as if you were the target. So Linda wants to know how you're going to stay strong in all of this.
Well, I'm going to talk to people like you on forums like this, because I think we can get our message out directly to people in a way that we didn't used to be able to in the past. In addition, I look at all of the alternative media outlets, whether it's Western Standard, which allowed me some time to do podcasts, or whether it's True North, who I've been a guest on, and also Rebel Media. Those are our platforms that allow for a diversity of views. And it's not just those who are aligned with us on conservative values. On the left, you also see things like the Tyee and Canada Lands and the Observer. And so when you look at that robust alternative media environment that's developing, I think that's the way that we can assure that we get more balanced perspective. I do hope the mainstream media realizes that they're losing viewers if they don't allow for more voices to be heard. And I'm hoping that we get an adjust or a correct back. Because you and I both remember what the media used to be. It used to be fair, accurate, and balanced. That was the mantra. And I sadly have not seen much balance in the mainstream, which is why we're beginning to see this polarization. But I think that there's a way for the media to return to its original role. And I think it's going to be these alternative outlets that are going to force them to do a little bit of self-reflection on how they've been reporting over the last few years, and hopefully be able to provide more voices.
Yeah, it almost seems, as you say, as if people are starting to figure it out and recognize that maybe there is a government narrative being pushed to an extent, and some of what they see is they're going to have to find from an alternative source. Danielle, one of your major, well, I guess your major promise is to put Albertans first, and it's a great thing to say, and I know you in your heart believe it. How do you intend to do it?
There's so many things. It's funny because the Sovereignty Act to me was such a great idea that was put forward by Rob Anderson and his Free Alberta strategy. Now, I didn't adopt everything in the Free Alberta strategy. And so I think that's some of the criticism is that people are looking at the entire strategy saying, wait a minute, you can't just not remit federal taxes. And they're probably right. You probably can't do that. But when I look at what the Sovereignty Act is really all about, it's about exerting and asserting that we have a constitutional jurisdiction that the federal government keeps interfering on. I think what's happened is that maybe when we started off as a low population province, when Peter Lougheed was governing and we only had 1.5 million people, and we had a federal government that I think looked at us with a measure of goodwill, I think we kind of thought, okay, well, maybe Ottawa can help us out. We'll take a little bit of money, we'll cost share, and we'll allow them to tell us how to run our programs. But I don't think that we can look at Ottawa now as having our best interests at heart. It's pretty clear to me that Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault wants to shut down our oil and gas industry. There's no other reason why he would have put forward a policy of having a special cap and trade program for oil and gas and making them reduce emissions 50% by 2030. We all know that's not possible. There's a lot possible with technology, but not that. And then the 30% reduction in fertilizer use that they were proposing, that's just to try to reduce food production and reduce profitability and production on our farmland. So we know that we're in their crosshairs. And I think that because of that, we have to realize time to assert a different relationship with Ottawa, one a lot more like Quebec, where we look through the Constitution and every single area of provincial jurisdiction, we say we're taking that back. We are also a signatory to the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and we are going to protect the rights and freedoms of our citizens, especially mobility rights, which have been so violated over the last number of years by our federal government. So my view is that we just establish the same line in the sand that Quebec does, saying we will not enforce anything that violates our provincial rights in the Constitution or the Charter rights of our citizens. And they already did this, right? I mean, when the Emergencies Act came through, they convened their assembly. They said, we're not going to enforce that. So if they can do it, then we can too. And I think it's now time we have to if we're going to become a senior partner in Confederation.
Danielle, I'm going to read some questions. I'll tell you what, it goes against my nature. There's so many questions I want to ask you, and I want to follow up on the things that you're saying, but I want to properly get to the questions coming from home here. So before I read the one on the screen, we got a comment in from Melissa that said, I just bought 4 memberships for my family to vote for Danielle. And she wanted to remind everybody to go to daniellesmith.ca to do it. So before I read this question, I'll remind you all at home, you have until midnight tonight to buy a membership and vote for Alberta's next premier. So the question I'm going to read you is from Anastasia. Is there a plan for Alberta wages to keep up with the cost of living, in particular, people whose job is dependent on government funding, in particular, healthcare workers such as nurses and people like that in education? Have you thought about that?
We are in sort of a wage price spiral here. And we've seen that before, that people are looking at what inflation's going to be. So wages get bargained up and then everybody is spending more. And so inflation goes up. And we've seen that terrible situation through the 70s and 80s. So there are certain wages that we have to make sure go up. And those are the income supports that we have for our most vulnerable. So when we look at Alberta Seniors Benefit, when we look at AISH, when we look at the programs that are supporting those who don't really have a means to independently support themselves, it's vitally important we do that. It's important as well, and I think you saw all the candidates commit to this, that we go back to re-indexing the income tax brackets, because right now you have a certain amount of money that you can earn before you pay taxes, and it's frozen at today's levels. That's the other one that we have to make sure that we're indexing so that people are able to keep more of what they earn as prices go up. And to me, the main thing is to be supporting everything that Pierre Poilievre has said at the federal level the federal government has created a lot of this problem because they just kept on printing money. And so we see that the bank, and it's really painful, that the bank is now raising interest rates. And we're watching that with great interest, because we've got to make sure that we don't keep on seeing these kinds of massive year-over-year increases, because it just erodes a person's purchasing power. So there's going to be a lot of work that we have to do with our friends at the federal level when Pierre Poilievre gets elected. And in the meantime, just make sure that we're creating an environment so people can keep more of what they earn. We certainly don't want to see an increase in taxes, and we want to make sure that more dollars get down to the front lines. I mean, if we're talking about government workers, I would say I would far rather see more dollars going to support education assistants and teachers and nurses and LPNs and doctors than senior administrators and their big fat bonuses. So I think that that's part of what we can do. If we can get more of those dollars on the front line to support them, then we may be able to get to the right balance.
Great question coming in next. Before I get to it, I can just say that I can absolutely attest to what you were saying, because I know when we sat together from 2012 to 2015, one of our key platforms was beef up the front lines and cut out the middle management. So I'm happy to hear that. I'm hearing that from people all over the province. I've got a question here. Somebody wants to know, how can you assure us that the Sovereignty Act will actually be implemented? And then they go on to say, you know, the opponents are suggesting there'll be chaos if we go to this, and lawyers are suggesting this isn't possible. And yet most Albertans seem to think this is a very good thing. So maybe comment on that.
Well, I think we have to realize that we already have chaos. I know that we like to pretend that we've got a collegial relationship with the rest of the provinces and with the federal government. We don't. When the federal government under the Liberals got elected, they declared war on our province, really economic war with the economic sanctions they imposed. They're violating the Constitution, quite frankly, by not working with us to get our product to market. We gave the federal order of government the power over trade and commerce to reduce and eliminate trade restrictions, not to put in a tanker ban so we can't export our resources, not to put in arbitrary rules so we can't get project approved. So I would say that the federal government has been acting in a lawless way. And what they do is they pass laws that are clearly unconstitutional, and then they make us spend the money to fight it out in court. We just got a court victory on Bill C-69. Now all the other provinces are coming on board with us. Why would they make us go through such a rigmarole? I mean, that's the thing, is that we have to realize that Ottawa, under this dual leadership of Jagmeet Singh, Rachel Notley's boss, and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, they're not our friends. And so when you have that situation, you have to take a little bit of a harder approach. And I can tell you, when I look at what's happening in Quebec, I don't hear anybody worried there's going to be specific taxes on the aerospace industry, or that they might shut down their cement or aluminum plants, or that they're going to start calculating and assigning special taxes to hydroelectric power and all the methane emissions that come up from the vegetation that's rotting. They wouldn't even dream of doing that in Quebec. And why not? Because they respect them. And so they respect them because I think they realize that Quebec understands its role and understands the Constitution and understands its own power. So I would say people who are concerned just need to watch what Quebec does, watch the federal reaction, and realize that that's all we're asking for, just to be treated with the same level of respect that we give to that province. And I think that we'll get along just fine. Part of what the Sovereignty Act does, though, there's two things. One is that it puts Ottawa on notice that we are going to be repatriating all of the areas that we've ceded to them. The second thing it does is that it sends a message to our bureaucracy. We've got 256,000 people who work for us. It sends a message to them that everything they do, every decision they make, should be done through the lens of putting Alberta first, checking our Constitution, seeing our rights, exercising our full rights under the Constitution, and realizing we don't have to compromise for Ottawa, that they're the ones who are asking to invade our territory and our jurisdiction. And we have the right to say no under our Constitution. We're not a subordinate level of government. So if part of our conversation is helping to people to realize that we have power in our own right, I think we'll convince people one at a time. I'm pretty persuasive, so I'm going to keep on working at it.
Yeah, you are that. You'll get no argument from me, having sat next to you for a few years. I love to hear you talking about Quebec as much as you did, because one of the things that always drove me nuts, even back to my media days, was that Quebec seemed to be able to push back against Ottawa and get its own way. it's really not about getting your own way as much as it is, I guess, representing your province and the people of it. And I think what I'm hearing from you is it's time that Alberta pushed back and took some pages out of Quebec's playbook. Yes?
Completely. You know, I've told this story many times. You probably heard it when I came out to Chestermere when you hosted me there the other day. But one of the last interviews that I did was with a scholar by the name of Germain Belzile from the Montreal Economic Institute. He's sadly passed on, but what he said to me at the time, because I was asking him the question, because I was frustrated, and I said, why does Quebec hate us so much? And he said, Quebec doesn't hate you. They just don't think about you at all. They're too busy thinking about themselves. And it's time for you to think about yourself for a change. And I've heard it from an MLA who spent some time in Quebec, and he expressed the same thing. When are you guys going to stand up for yourself? When are you going to start doing what we do? So I don't think that our action it has to be hostile to other provinces. In fact, you know, I'd kind of like to invite a delegation from Quebec to explain to us the mechanics of setting up our own income tax, since they've done it. I'd like to bring them here so we can understand how to set up our own Alberta provincial police, because they've done it. I'd like their input on how they've structured their immigration program. They set it so that they can attract people who speak the French language. I'd like for us to have our own immigration program so that we can attract people who are in trucking and the trades and agriculture and service industries like we have, and medical professions. So these are the kind of things that Quebec already does. And I think we should work with them. And who knows, if Alberta and Quebec are working together, maybe BC and Ontario will say, I think we'd like to do that too. And then we can really change this country back to what the founders originally intended. So that's what I would like to do, is that I'd like us to get back to the kind of structure for our confederation that was really how it was supposed to be. It was not supposed to be take as much money as you can out of Alberta, dole a little bit back with stringent conditions, steal the rest to win votes in Quebec and Atlantic Canada, rinse and repeat. That is not how our country is supposed to work. And so if it takes us standing up to push back, then I think we should do that.
Well, if I've heard it once, Danielle, I've heard it 100 times during this leadership run. Albertans are tired of being the doormats for the rest of the country and tired of Justin Trudeau's agenda. So, frankly, it's nice to see you have a plan to go forward. I got a question from Neil. I think we'll probably put it up on the screen, and I'll read it to you as well. We have trouble keeping doctors, it says, in rural communities. If we're bringing in docs from outside of Canada, would it be possible to have foreign doctors serve a mandatory term in these smaller towns when they first get here? How can we train and keep more homegrown doctors in Alberta?
There's a couple of things. Number one, we have these arbitrary limits on how many doctors we currently accept at the universities. I'm trying to get to the bottom of that, but I was speaking with Ranjit yesterday, who's taken a real interest in this at the event in Edmonton. And he said that we have 30 spaces for doctors. Well, we know that we probably could be graduating 100, maybe 200 doctors. I need to understand why it is we have these arbitrary limits, because then what happens is that these kids who have a passion to be doctors end up going abroad. They go to the UK or Australia, and then they get trained there, and they want to come back, and we don't offer them a residency. And so they end up going elsewhere. I met a young man who had a neurosurgery as his background, and he's now in Georgia because we wouldn't give him a place. So when I hear from Alberta Health Services, we can't attract doctors, I guess I'm telling you, I just don't believe much of what Alberta Health Services tells me anymore. And that's part of the reason why we've got to put more power in the hands of local people at local hospitals in local communities and empower them to do that attraction. So whether it's a combination of us graduating more or attracting more doctors, I think that the proposal was a good one, that you either say, as a condition for you coming here, we would like you to locate in these particular areas and have a broad range of zones that they can go into that are not Calgary and Edmonton. But you can also maybe just use a carrot too with our graduating doctors. What if we told them, for every year that you work in a rural community, we will forgive 1/5 of your student loans. And then after you've worked for 5 years at a rural community, you will have no student loans left. And by then they might have developed ties to the community, got married, had kids, and then be there for life. I think that we can be a bit more strategic with the carrots and incentives that we offer. And I think people will make the choice to move in those communities. One more thing I would say about it is in my community of High River, we have just a really inspired doctor, Dr. Ron Gorshay, and he created, and just remember, our town only has 13,000 people in it, but we have a full service hospital. We do a lot of the hernia operations from South Calgary. But one of the things that Doc Gorshay did is he said, okay, yes, you're here for private practice, but let's also get you admittance privileges at the hospital. And that's one of the real advantages in rural is that you can do both. You can be a general practitioner, and you can also have the ability to deliver babies and do general surgery. And if we create more of those pathways, I think it would actually be an advantage to rural doctors, and it would be one of those ways in which those communities would be able to attract more people. So that's the kind of thing I'm hoping we can do.
Going to follow up on the healthcare system, Danielle, with a question from Sean. But just before I do, I want to remind you watching right now, first of all, thank you for joining us today. Appreciate your time, really do, that you're tuning in. I know Danielle does, and it's a chance for you to get up close and personal with Danielle again. We want to remind you that the cutoff to buy a membership to vote for Alberta's next premier is midnight tonight. So you can go to daniellesmith.ca, go to that website, and get yourself a membership, and your friends and your family, and have a say. And let's pick the right premier for this province. Danielle, Sean wants to know if you would consider an internal audit to the healthcare system. There's some heavy skepticism out there about what's going on with AHS, and Sean asks a question I think that's on the minds of a lot of people.
Oh, he's totally right. So let me tell you a couple of things that I learned as I was traveling around the province is that every rural community I go to, I hear the same stories. So keep in mind, we've got 106 hospitals because Lougheed's original vision was that everyone should be able to have services close to home, because if you want to attract families and workers to a community, you've got to have good schools. And once you've got kids in a community, grandma and grandpa want to move there. So if grandma and grandpa move, you've got to be able to have a good health facility. And then as they age, you have to have local long-term care. That was the Lougheed vision. But here's what's happened as we've centralized Alberta Health Services is that they started pulling all the services out of those rural hospitals. And so a couple things I've discovered just from anecdotal stories is that there's as many as 60% of beds that used to be acute care that have now been turned into essentially transition beds for people who are waiting placement in long-term care. Surely we can find a better place for our seniors to be waiting for a permanent placement than a hospital room. I sure wouldn't want to be sitting in a hospital room for 3 or 6 or 9 months or a year as I was waiting my new home. So let's find a more appropriate type of facility. And then if we can free up 500 or 600 beds, now we have the ability to have surge capacity when we get into the fall respiratory virus season. And then when that's over, we've got capacity to be able to start clearing the backlog of surgeries. So I would like to hire Alberta Health Quality Council because I think they're an independent voice. They report directly to Alberta Health and the minister. And I think we will get the straight goods from them. And I want to ask them a few things. Go out and do a facility audit. Let's find out how many beds are with these transition patients awaiting placement in long-term care, and how can we free them up? How many operating rooms are not in operation? When I went up to High Prairie, brand new hospital, 4 years old, they've got 2 operating rooms that have never been put into service. So if that's happening there, how many other operating rooms have been mothballed or turned into storage facilities? That's the second thing. There's also wings of hospitals or floors of hospitals that have been shut down. Those would be able to be put into active service too. So we've got to do the facility audit first, because I can tell you one of the things that came out of a Freedom of Information request not so long ago was that we were contemplating sending surgical teams and their patients to the Okanagan so that we could clear the backlog. My attitude is, let's use the Alberta facilities first. Let's make sure we're using them to the full effect. The other thing I would say, and we can't sugarcoat this, is the relationship with our frontline workers is so damaged. The nurses, the LPNs, our nursing assistants, physician assistants, we've got paramedics, doctors, as well as nurse practitioners. All of them are feeling disrespected. And the environment that we've created over the last 2 years has been really, really difficult. I think what happened is that we were already understaffed in key positions because we were just relying on mandatory overtime. when we ended up with a surge. Well, no one expected that we would be needing a mandatory overtime for 2.5 years. We've completely burnt out our front line, and people are leaving the profession as a result. If we can create a more peaceful environment for them, a more manageable environment for them, so that there isn't so much chaos, so that there isn't constant demands for overtime, we might be able to attract more workers back in. Someone told me we have as many as 25,000 healthcare workers who've just left the profession. I think we've got the people and the manpower. We just need to give them respect and tell them that the relationship will be different, and we need their help, especially going into fall. I'm hearing that it's never been this bad from the doctors that I'm talking about, with the understaffing and the burnout. So we're going to need to work overtime to repair that relationship.
Yeah, we're hearing that, Danielle, just on a personal level. We have several nurses as very good friends in the province of Alberta. Exactly what you say is happening. And I can tell you that the message that you're delivering from the heart about those changes, that is resonating. I think the frontline workers recognize that you're going to respect them and do as you say. Really tough question.
Before I move to another question, let me just compliment you, because you're the one who has taught me on that. Because one of the things I always appreciated about you when we were in office together is you were in a hard portfolio. You were in education, and I always relied on you to have those excellent relationships with QP and with the Alberta Teachers Association. And I don't know if I told you this, but I did just go to a conference. I think I kind of blew it. I don't think that they loved me there. I was trying to channel my Bruce McAllister there, but I did end up thinking, oh, gee, I wish he was here, because he would have known how to say that so much better than me. But one of the things they did tell me is that they always had a really good relationship with the Wild Rose when you were education critic. And so I think we can go back to having that kind of relationship. There's no reason why our party, even though we're conservative and we might have different ideological perspectives on things, there's no reason why we can't find some common ground, especially with our front lines. We all care about our kids. We all want to make sure that they've got the best education possible. We know that 95% of parents put their kids in the public or Catholic or Francophone system.
Yep.
And so it's really important that relationship work too.
Yeah, managing those stakeholder relations is key. You got it. I remember sitting on a panel and taking questions at an ATA conference in Banff with Kent Hare and Darren Billis beside me, and they were booing at first some of the things, but I hung in and stood for parental choice in education and for the values of conservatives. And by the end, we made some friends. So wasn't my favorite event.
Do you mind if I talk to you a little bit more about that? Because I saw the news stories that said that I got booed by the teachers group, and I wanted people to understand what I was trying to explain there, just so that you know that even when I go into a tough crowd, I feel like sometimes you need to deliver a tough message, even if it's not always going to be well received. And the curriculum, as you know, has been very controversial with the teachers. And I have to be frank, I think that the government's done a good job of pausing where they could. But by the time this race is over, we are going to be into October. So the other changes are going to go ahead. School starts in the next few weeks. All the materials have been ordered. All the training's being done. So we've got K-3 education, language arts, and mathematics that is going to be implemented. And the teachers are not 100% happy with that. And I understand that. But I have also heard, what I was telling them is that part of the reasons for the changes that we're making is that we hear from parents how concerned they are about their kids not being able to read. And I told a story about a young girl who had social promotion, so that she showed up in grade 10 at Lord Shaughnessy with a grade 1 reading level. And her teachers did an amazing job bringing her up to grade level. I think she got up to grade 9 reading level. But my question was, why would we continue pushing kids through if they don't have the requisite skills? And same with math, because you were there at the time. All of the concerns parents heard about discovery math, getting back to some more grounding in basics so the parents can help their kids do the math homework. I think that was an important message. And then I've also just said that, quite frankly, parents are concerned when they have their kids come home and they hear things in the classroom that are at odds with their values or at odds with their own view about important issues like energy development. Those are the kind of things that are causing parents to look for alternatives. So if we've got a better way of addressing those, I'm all ears, but I think they needed to hear why it is we're hearing frustration and why it is we're taking some of the decisions that we are. So that was the reason why I got booed. So I just wanted to have full disclosure there in case people didn't get that background.
Well said. I got a real heavy hitting question for you from Christian. Okay.
Yeah.
Christian, you can see it on the screen there, D. I'm having some troubles with my screen, but I'm looking at my iPhone. He wants to know, are you going to be able to still work at the restaurant during your tenure as premier, or is your poor husband going to be short-staffed?
I have to tell you, my life has been a little bit ridiculous. I did have to pull a shift on July the 1st because he was short-staffed. So I did do a waitressing and dishwashing shift that day. And every Sunday I have to be home because I've got to process the payroll and the tips and the and get everything into our accounting. I do the bookkeeping. So I've been out on the road sometimes. I mean, last week was a little ridiculous. I think I got home at 7:00 at night and then did 2 hours of bookkeeping and then had to be on the road again the next morning. So I'm pretty sure my husband's not going to let me off the hook on that one. And yeah. I would, it's all hands on deck when you own a business. And I'm the best dishwasher in the West. That is where I truly excel. He will probably keep me in the kitchen more often because he likes to have a no politics zone in the business. So,
I'm guessing you talk quite a bit when you're serving tables. That's probably part of the problem.
Totally, it slows business down. Yeah. So, but it's been such a great joy for us actually to provide that restaurant to the community. As you know, I mean, High River really suffered during the floods, and we've lost a lot of businesses from our downtown. And this poor little beautiful railway dining car from 1947, it was in a really sad state of repair, and we just knew if we didn't fix it, no one else would. I love trains. He loves trains. We put a lot of investment in it, and it's become a little local business attraction. So we're pretty happy about having been able to restore that gem for our community. So it is a place of joy for us.
I think I see a solution here. Look, Christian, if you're that concerned, and it sounds like you are, why don't you head down to High River and see if you can help. Danielle's husband is David Moretta, good guy, good chap. I've known him a long time. He'd be happy to get you online to help out so Danielle can do some of the other things. Quick comment. We got a comment from Angela as a teacher, D, who said, I'm a teacher and I fully support you. So that's wonderful to hear. Remind you if you want.
That's important, Bruce, because
Yep.
I know that there's this sense among some of the mainstream reporting that you see that every group votes as a monolith, and I just don't believe that's true.
They don't.
I mean, it may be that we aren't able to win everyone over who are in those frontline professions, but I think if you show respect, show that you care, then I think we'll be able to have a number of teachers who do support us come forward to make sure and give us that honest feedback if we're on the right track and when we're on the wrong track. So I'm grateful to Angela for saying that, because that's been my experience too.
100%. And I, as education critic for you, although I called it education advocate, spent a lot of times with numerous stakeholders and stakeholder groups in the teaching profession. They don't all vote the same way, and there are good conservatives among them, and we're lucky to have them. So good point. Debbie wants to know, and Dee, I know you know the answer to this, I probably do too, but where will we vote? Is it in person? How do we do this?
It's such a great point. And I've asked our campaign manager, Matt Altine, to make sure that we get some of this information out when memberships close. So the most important thing we've been pushing for has been membership purchase by 11:59 p.m. tonight. That's why we're doing this last push, just in case everyone was saying, oh, wait a minute, when's that deadline again? It's today. So the next step is he's going to send her an email just so everyone understands, because I have a bunch of people saying, well, I haven't received my membership yet, or where's my ballot? It's very similar to what happened at the federal level, where you have the membership sales close, and I believe the ballots will be sent out September the 3rd. So we've got, so look in your mailbox in that first week of September. And in fact, the party did a really good job of getting the ballots out in most cases to most people. The trick is getting it back in time. So we're going to say a couple, and so what has happened this time is that they've offered two options. So you get your ballot in the mail, you get it early, turn around, put a stamp on it. If it needs one, send it back in. Might be business reply envelope. But the other option is to vote in person, and there are 5 ballot stations. I might see if Matt's listening in, maybe he can post that somewhere so that you have the information. I'm pretty sure that we've got one in Calgary and Edmonton. The north one is in Athabasca. Pretty sure we've got one in Red Deer, and then there's one down south. I think it's Lethbridge. So we will make sure that we know where the voting locations are, where the voting stations are, and what the hours on those voting stations are. I don't know that the parties released that information yet, but we've got 2 options, which is really good. And so there'll be, everybody is getting, I think, 20 or 30 emails today from each of the different camps. So I don't think it'll be hard to figure out those details as we get closer to it. You'll be bombarded with information. But don't worry if you haven't received your ballot yet. It's because they haven't finished processing all the memberships. They need a little bit of time to make sure there aren't duplicates, and it'll be coming out at the beginning of September.
Excellent. Well, you're a wealth of knowledge. You know, you could run a campaign, not just run to be premier. You could probably do both, although you've got a great team around you. I want to ask you a bit, moderator's privilege here. I just want to ask you a question, Dee, about lockdowns and personal freedoms. Look, many of us, yours truly included, was royally offended by some of the things that were done by our government during the COVID situation. We weren't going to do this, then we did that. We really seemed to pit the unvaccinated against the vaccinated, and frankly, it didn't resonate that well. How will you handle that?
It was such a mistake. You know, I had a lot of people say, "Why do you keep forgiving the premier?" And it was because I know he had a hard job, and I know.
Danielle, I think we lost you. I wasn't sure if that was me or you, but I'll tell you what, your timing is really good because it is 1 o'clock, and that's about when we were going to wrap up. I'm just going to ask you, Matthew, it's like my old TV days. I used to wear an earpiece, and I could talk to the control room while I was reading the news to you. So today what I'm doing is a live version of that. Matthew, could you just shoot me a text message? Are we okay to wrap? Are we going to get Danielle back? I would have liked to have had Danielle say her goodbyes, and I'll certainly wrap up and let people know about the next session and those things. But let me know if I'm okay to do that, or if we're going to try and get Danielle back online. I would love to have her sign off if we can. Maybe I'll wait for you to text me, but we'll try to get a goodbye from her. So we'll try to get her back. In the meantime, here's what I want to tell you as we try to get Dee back. Today's the cutoff. We've mentioned it many times. Danielle, now you're going to have to wait because I'm pontificating. You have until midnight tonight to buy your membership at daniellesmith.ca. And we're going to do this again at 6 o'clock tonight. And we've got a couple other MLAs with us, including former ministers, Casey Madu being one of them. They're going to join us tonight at 6 o'clock and give you another opportunity to visit with Danielle and ask questions. Dee, we're almost out of time. We just lost
I
you
think we're going to go a little bit longer, aren't we? I think we decided to go a little bit longer.
Look, I'm happy to stay all day.
Perfect.
So
let me answer that question. I see somebody saying convenient that she didn't answer that question, and I've got 3 angry faces. So let me answer that question. You know, guys, okay. I don't know what happened. My earbuds weren't working on my desktop, so I'm hoping to be able to fix that tonight before we go on this at 6, because it's a more secure line. No, I was saying that I think that the premier was trying to get us back into freedom as quickly as possible, and he was trying to take as long as possible to put the restrictions in place. But the big failure happened in September. There was really no reason to go to war on the unvaccinated. I think we knew a lot about this virus at that time, that we knew it was impacting those who were over age 70 with multiple pre-existing conditions, living in congregate care. We had known that within the first several months of the COVID outbreak. And so there was really no reason to be putting that kind of pressure and creating that kind of division. And I think it's the reason we're having a race now, quite frankly, is that there was just too much infighting that happened between families, too many friendships that were lost. And I worry about what happened to the kids on the school ground as well, that if they were feeling under pressure or being ostracized, I think that was a wrong turn. It's part of the reason why we must make sure we never lock down again, because we can't sacrifice our kids that way. We've got to let kids continue to be kids.
Okay, listen, that's what I know everybody wants to hear, and we're hearing it loud and clear. Since we're going to stay a little bit longer, Danielle, I'm going to go to a couple more questions. You okay with that?
You got it. Yep.
All right, let's go to Ryan. Guys, if you can put Ryan's question on the screen, it says, will you aspire to improve the relationship between UCP, the province, and and the capital. Same goals: economic growth, mental health care and housing, etc. And that's coming in from Ryan.
Well, if he means the capital of Ottawa, then I have a different answer. But I think he means the capital being Edmonton. That's how I would read that.
I think you're right.
And I think that Edmonton has felt a bit neglected. I feel like what has happened in Edmonton is there's been this sense of, oh, well, Rachel Notley's got that wrapped up, so let's not even give it a try. And I can tell you that my campaign team does not feel that way. It's part of the reason why when Casey agreed to endorse me, I said, we got to do a big event in Edmonton so that people know that we're going to be coming out in full force to win as many seats as we can here. If you look at the results, I mean, it was a tougher slog in Edmonton. I don't want to be overconfident, but if you look at the last election, there were, I think, 8 seats that we won, and then 7 that we only lost by about 1,000 votes or less. And so those are winnable seats if we can get the relationship repaired and we can get the message right. So I am committed to doing it. I've spent lots of time in Edmonton over the last number of months, and I'm putting just as much effort into winning those seats in Edmonton as I am in Calgary, as I am in rural Alberta.
Yep, love it. And great to see Minister Madu, by the way, join your team. I'm really happy to see that. You know, I just saw him following me on Twitter a couple of days ago. Was my red flag? Hey, something's up with this guy. And now I see he's on your team. So that's wonderful.
Can I just say something as well about Minister? I think we might be talking to him tonight, but
he's going to join us tonight.
Oh, terrific! The thing people need to know, and we'll talk a little more about this, is that the difficult part about being in cabinet is that you have to support the government program. That's just how it is. I mean, I think we saw years ago, we had a cabinet minister who didn't, so he resigned at the federal level. But there is also some value in having somebody just fight like heck to try to make sure that our voices are heard. And I know that Casey Madu was fighting like heck to try to get better balance. So I think people will be surprised and delighted that he has been such a consistent voice. I know that he has done just a ton of work. He's right now in citizenship and immigration. And as you heard from what I said earlier, we've got a lot of work that we need to do on that front. And so I'm looking forward to using his expertise to help with that.
Love it. I heard him speak, Danielle. I went to an Edmonton Chamber event pretty early in their tenure, and really enjoyed what he had to say and how he communicated, and love to see him supporting you. Going to ask you another question. This one's from Sarah. It's a bit longer, so bear with me, but we'll try and put it on the screen for you as well. There it is. We need better birth services in rural Alberta. Our town used to be a very popular place to give birth. People moved here just because of that. Now we don't see births here. More birth centers, more midwives. It'll take pressure off rural doctors as well. Have you heard that on the campaign trail, Dee, and would you like to address it?
Amen, Sarah Lynn. Totally right. I mean, I noticed that 10 years ago when I was traveling the province, they said we used to deliver babies here. And then we lost our anesthesiologist. And because we weren't able to have somebody on tap if there was a woman with a complicated birth, they removed all of the births out of the hospital. So I have to see if we can find a solution there. Maybe the solution is that we've got to make sure that we have more anesthesiologists at all of our rural hospitals so that we can do more surgeries. I think that's going to be one of the options. But to her other point, why don't we have more birthing centers? I was born in the Grace Hospital. And that was a place where they did maternal care. And they used to have a strategy where they would let women and babies stay in the facility for a while so they could bond and they could learn from other mothers and get the support that they needed. Postpartum depression is a really big issue that can be diagnosed. So maybe that's the kind of thing that we need to support more of, is having funding follow the patient. And if moms want to have midwives or they want to go to a birthing center, that we make sure that they've got the supports they need. And let's just see if we can get a better experience for new young moms, because I have to tell you, I can't imagine what it would be like if you live in a rural community, knowing that at any moment your water might break and you have to be planning for how you're going to get to a hospital to make sure that your baby's born in a comfortable environment and a safe environment. We've got to do better than that. If we're going to have young families in every community, we have to have the ability for the uncomplicated births for them to be able to do that at home. We used to be able to do it. We can do it again.
Awesome. Danielle, when you came to Chestermere, you had 200 people out at noon on a Tuesday afternoon. It's been like that for you around the province. I mentioned Chestermere, of course, because that's my home, and I was grateful that you came out, and so many people were happy to see you. You're in Edmonton last night. You had, I think I read 400 people out there. Oh, look, there's the campaign team with a picture. Welcome. Thank you, guys. Welcome to our team, and there's you and Minister Madhu. Just comment on the turnout that you had, the support that we're receiving maybe in that city and the vibe there last night.
Oh, completely. One of the things that I would notice, and maybe my approach is a little bit different, but I know that that Casey is exactly of the same view, is that there seems to be two strains that happen in the conservative movement. One is, well, let's see if we can out liberal the liberals, or out NDP the NDP, so that we can win votes in Calgary and Edmonton, and rural will just come along with us because we're conservative, and where else are they going to go? And I've heard way too many conservatives say that. My view is the opposite, and Casey said this last night, and I totally agree with him. We already have 39 out of 41 seats in rural Alberta. That's our base. And the reason it's our base is because in rural Alberta, you've got strong families, often multi-generational families, working in family businesses, whether it's a farm or whether it's an industrial operation. You've got people who are involved in their communities. They are involved in their church or Rotary or Elks or Lions Club. And so they don't look to government as the first option. They want to have social safety net there, but they also work together as a community to make sure no one falls through. Calgary and Edmonton, we have communities exactly like that, that are, I think, more in the suburban communities where you've got large families, you've got parents who know each other because of hockey or dance or having kids in band. They get involved in their church, they get involved in community events. And I think when you have that, that is, and also businesses that have started up, I think that when you have that, you're going to have the perfect marriage of being able to have rural and Calgary and Edmonton aligned on principles. And so that's why I feel like there's 8 winnable seats in Edmonton, because I think that there are seats like that where they share the same strong conservative values that we see so prominently displayed in communities like yours and mine where we live in, and same thing in Calgary. So I feel really strongly that we've got the kind of coalition that we can win. I feel conservatives lose when they stop acting and governing and talking like conservatives. For some reason, we're afraid to embrace the values and principles that our members tell us that they want, and that's when we start losing people. I believe that free enterprise, individual responsibility, taking care of family, making sure you're involved in community, those are all things that we should feel are the better answers for society. And that's the reason why I think we can win. We just have to be confident in what we say.
I'm resisting the urge to hit my desk and say, here, here. I think many conservatives feel the same way. We had a lot of weather vane politics the last couple of years, and it's frankly been embarrassing for conservatives watching it. I know we've been mentioning Casey Madhu. We also have Nate Glubish joining us tonight on our call. And again, for those of you that might have just joined in here to our virtual event, 6 to 7, we're going to do this again. We've got a couple of more UCP MLAs and ministers joining us, former ministers and ministers. So we're looking forward to that. Here's the question, Danielle from Brock. Brock says, I saw recently Nate Glubish talking about a digital production tax credit. Can you talk a little bit about the success film, TV, gaming, and post-production industry have had in Alberta, and how initiatives like that tax credit will help continue to diversify Alberta's economy in both Calgary and Edmonton and in rural communities? So great question from Brock.
It's awesome. So you may remember Blake Peterson was our culture critic back in the day, and he got a motion that passed in the legislature at that time about bringing in a film tax credit that was similar to what they see in other jurisdictions. So this has been a policy that I've supported for a long time. And so when they came through with the changes, and what it does is as I understand it, it's a refundable tax credit based on the amount of money a film crew spends on labor in Alberta. And I think we've also made it that we make it available for those multi-year productions so they keep on coming back. And we know that we want to attract those huge productions because there's just so many economic benefits that happen. We down south, we've got Ghostbusters here. We also got Last of Us, a zombie movie. There was even another zombie movie from Netflix that was filmed in our rail car as well. So I've seen firsthand the kind of attraction that has had. So what Nate told us is that there actually is a bigger industry in digital gaming, and a lot of that is centered in Edmonton. So it would be very much modeled along the same lines, that the amount of spend on labor would have a refundable tax credit to encourage more of those businesses to locate here and to set up production facilities here. So we have to work with the digital industry to make sure that we've got the levels right and to make sure that we're consistent with what we see elsewhere. But if it has any kind of impact like the film industry, I think it's going to be an incredible policy. And as we know, once you start attracting those creative jobs, those high-tech jobs, it draws the attention of the world, and then you can attract more. We have always been talking about how are we going to diversify our economy? Well, I feel very strongly that there's a huge future for oil, for bitumen, for natural gas, for hydrogen, and for all the carbon technology associated with that. But I also believe that we have the ability to marry those two because we have such a high-tech oil and gas industry that we should have a natural ability to attract all those tech jobs. Some of them will be in our traditional sectors, but a lot of them are going to be in these new creative sectors. And so I think if we can elevate ourselves so people give us a second look, it's going to be amazing the kind of people we'll be able to attract here.
We've covered a lot of ground. I'm going to wrap in a minute, but before I do so, Danielle, I'd like to give you a chance to your final message to people that might buy a membership today, supporting you. What's your pledge, and why do you want to see them do that?
Well, I can see that my campaign manager put up everywhere we've been, just to show you that I do take it so seriously that we need to hear from every person in every part of the province, and everybody needs to feel part of this United Conservative Party movement, because I think that's been some of the problem that we've had over the last number of years is that so many decisions have been made out of Calgary or Edmonton. But you go to Calgary and they say, well, Edmonton gets everything. You go to Edmonton and they say, well, Calgary gets everything. You go to rural and they say, we're totally neglected. I feel like when I've talked about Lougheed before, and it shouldn't surprise you because I think he is a great conservative mind that we've had in this province, and a leader who had a real vision as we were going through an extraordinary period of growth. And for me, one of the things that's so great about Alberta is we've got these beautiful regions of economic development up in Fort McMurray and Grand Prairie, over Cold Lake and Lloydminster. Of course, Edmonton is just absolutely booming with new investment. Red Deer is becoming an increasingly important attraction for all kinds of conferences because it's located between our two major cities, and it's also a feeder zone for opening up all of those areas in central Alberta. Calgary, of course, has always been such an attractor of investment capital. It's going to continue to be. Lethbridge has some amazing facilities down there for agriculture research, and it's got a vibrant arts community. And then Medicine Hat, they call themselves the Forgotten Corner, but not by me, because I love going over there and seeing some of the beautiful brickworks they have at Madelta and looking at the natural gas and the greenhouses that they're growing there. So it just seems to me, shouldn't also mention our beautiful mountain parks. I mean, look at what we've got. We've got this Jewel and Crow's Nest Pass and Waterton, Jasper, Banff. We've just got so much to celebrate here. And I wish everybody could run for leadership of a political party so that they could go everywhere in this province and see it as I do. I love every square inch of it. And I think we have to feel so proud of what we do and not be afraid to say we're going to continue to be an energy producer. And we're going to do it better than anywhere else in the world. We're going to continue to be a center of entrepreneurship and do it better than anywhere else in the world. We're going to attract technology so that we're on the cusp of being able to attract new creative entrepreneurs here as well. And we're also going to do all of that because we've got a vision of growing, doubling our population. So that means we're going to continue to have to build schools and hospitals and roads and all of the building trades that go along with that. And we're going to have to hire more education assistants and teachers and nurses and doctors. I mean, we're on a real growth trajectory, and we've got to get into that mindset that this really is, we're already on the cusp of being the second largest province by our GDP. We're going to be the second most populous province in pretty short order. And when we do that, I think it's going to change the country. So that's why I'm so excited to put Alberta first. This is really such a jewel. It's the best place in the world. I've always felt that way. As a born and raised Albertan.
Love it. Love it. Listen, great way to leave it. You promised me you'll do this with me again tonight at 6 o'clock.
I promise you I will. And I'm going to try to get some stable internet connection by the time I get there. I'm sorry, everybody's been so great indulging us on this today. But I'm looking forward to getting some last membership sales in. So we'll do this again at 6 o'clock.
Yeah, I'm going to push to that. Dee, thank you. Great to see you as always. And great handling all those questions. We'll talk again tonight, okay?
Fantastic. Bye, everyone.
All right, folks, just to remind you a couple things before we go. If you joined in late or you'd like to see more conversation with Danielle, we can do that tonight at 6 o'clock. We're going to have Danielle again because she's got some special guests coming. We've got Alberta Labour and Immigration Minister Casey Madhu, current Service Alberta Minister Nate Glubish, and Pat Rain, also MLA, going to join us tonight at 6 till 7. And we're going to discuss all the things that you want to discuss. And remember, the reason we're doing this, today is the cutoff to buy a UCP membership. So if you want to vote for Dan